How would you define a toxic relationship?
Toxic relationship to me is a relationship that is unhealthy and you can't seem to let each other go.
Partner kind of dictates their mood. Their mood dictates how you're gonna feel for the rest of the week, how you're just gonna deal with everything. They're gonna take things out on you, even if you have nothing to do with them. They're like not happy for your success, and it's just, that's mentally draining. It's exhausting.
Arguments for days, ghosting each other, not knowing how to resolve things, feeling like you can't grow in a relationship.
As much as you convince yourself, or as much as they try to convince you that everything's okay and that you really do love them, if they're hurting you, then that's not a healthy relationship. And if you're not able to talk about it with them, then you just gotta get out when you can.
Can you share your personal experience with an abusive or toxic relationship?
Yeah, so my personal experience with toxic relationships was really hard mentally. It had a huge impact on my mental health as it would drain me, and I would see this like affect my ability to play sports and just my everyday life. I always felt that I had to accommodate to their feelings, and I felt like I could never have a voice. My feelings were constantly being ignored, and I was always being turned into the bad person when I was just trying to express my emotions. I always felt like I had to fight for my spot in their life, and I felt like I was never treated like a person.
It's just like very mentally draining, and it's just very exhausting to constantly have to be in like a relationship where you don't know where you stand. It's just very like unpredictable. Like one day you guys can be having a good day, and then the next day you guys are just arguing, and it's just very tiring.
How did you recognize the signs of toxicity in your relationship, and what impact did it have on you emotionally and mentally?
So I recognized the signs because of how much codependency there was, and I felt like I could not grow as a person if I was still in that friendship or relationship. It began to feel unhealthy because I always felt like I was prioritizing their needs over mine, and that my voice would constantly be put underneath, and that I was always apologizing. I would rather keep them in my life even though they were hurting me mentally, and rather than to lose them and not have them in my life anymore. There was also manipulation in these relationships and friendships where they would use my insecurities against me. There would be a lot of passive aggressiveness and belittling my feelings.
The first signs were the fact that my mom and my older sister and like all of my friends did not like him, but clearly I was blinded. I stopped caring about my schoolwork, and I was just like so tired. Like my grades were super bad. Like this was during my sophomore year. That was the lowest my GPA's ever been. I was skipping classes. I had a really bad relationship with my parents at the time because they didn't like have any trust with me, and just it was super bad.
Were there moments when you felt trapped or unsure how to navigate the situation? How did you cope with those feelings?
I felt bad that I was having these thoughts or worries and concerns about a relationship, and it made me feel like I was wrong or crazy for thinking something or assuming something, and the way I coped with that was very unhealthy. I would, not say anything. I'd tell myself that I'm crazy, I'm overreacting.
Pues siempre me sentía atrapada, que no sabía cómo salir de esa relación, de esa situación. Era una situación bien tóxica para mí.
From your perspective, how do you think society generally views or misunderstands toxic relationships?
I think in a lot of toxic relationships, like even I was like this before. Like I would think like, oh, like he's clearly manipulating her. Like he's clearly like abusive towards her. Like why doesn't she just walk out? Why doesn't she like realize that she's being treated badly? And like I feel like a lot of the time the girl gets painted as like stupid because she can't like remove herself from the situation that she's
Held
in.
a gun to my head and threatened to kill me more times than I can even remember.
And you're the one being manipulated. You just fall back on all the times of how he's treated you right and the experiences that you guys shared together where they were happy moments. It's actually very hard to step away from a toxic relationship.
Some people think that, these things don't happen to men, when it does in fact happen to men.
A psychological trap disguised as love, one that millions of women and even a few men fall into every year.
You have a connection with someone, stronger than anyone, stronger than any connection you've ever had before, and it's so hard to let that go.
It's always physical, which of course in some cases it is always physical, but something that most people don't see and they don't detect is emotional manipulation. People don't realize the guilt tripping, the gaslighting, the having a victim complex, because it's all emotional and it's not actually physical. But once you're outside of that relationship and you start to reflect and look back on it, then you're able to see how much emotional manipulation you actually went through.
How do you think society can better support individuals in toxic relationships, and what advice would you give to someone currently facing a similar situation?
The best advice I can give is you just gotta be really, really patient. As a friend, you want the best for them, so it can be really frustrating seeing them go back to the toxic person. However, they also want to get out of that relationship. So it just takes time because it's way harder than people think. So you just gotta be patient.
Don't bring up the phrase, "Why didn't you just leave?" Because when you hear that, you start to degrade yourself. Because you're like, that's true, why didn't I leave? I'm so stupid for staying for so long. So when going into that, I feel like you just be there with them.
As a friend or family member, what steps would you take to support someone you suspect is in a toxic relationship?
If you're coming from the outside and you're trying to help somebody that's in a toxic relationship or that you suspect it, whether it's emotionally or physically, you should just be able to let them know that you always have a shoulder for them to lean on. And ultimately, it is their decision. It's hard. I know that it's hard, but just having the support there and letting them know that you're there for them and that they don't need to be in the relationship and that they're strong enough to walk away. I think that's really all you can do for another person that's in that situation.
Bueno, pues primero actualmente existen organizaciones de apoyo a personas que viven en ese maltrato y abuso físico por sus parejas y familiares. Y mi consejo es acudir a esas organizaciones que ayudan a las personas que están siendo abusadas y afrontar el problema.
Some advice I would give is to try and leave as soon as you can. I understand it's really hard and that you're just so used to them being in your life, but you have to let them go since they're not allowing you to be who you actually are. They're belittling your feelings, manipulation. Someone who manipulates you is not someone who loves you. Someone who does all that toxic stuff is not someone who loves you. And that's the hard truth, which it's hard to learn, but once you start to learn it and start to grow and heal from that and just learn to love yourself again, you'll thank yourself from leaving that toxic relationship.